If you like to talk about combat sports and you want to join the discussion, click the subscribe button below and the bell notification icon next to it and join Knucklehead Nation. What's going on, Knuckleheads? Thank you so much for joining me, and it looks like Dillian Whyte's name has officially been cleared with the UK anti-doping agency. If you don't know, the UK anti-doping, also known as UKAD, today issued a statement along with Dillian Whyte. It's unprecedented. It's something they don't typically do because they keep these things confidential. This is sort of like anything that goes on with you medically or with your health here in the United States. I guess they kind of have the same thing going on out there in the UK, and obviously they don't want people to know when people get in trouble for any kind of doping matters. But today, UKAD issued a joint statement along with Dillian Whyte, and I want to go ahead and read the statement for you. This is a huge deal for Dillian Whyte. I think it's a huge deal for the heavyweight division, for boxing, and I think it's very important that the boxing public know about this because Dillian Whyte's name was severely tarnished because of this charge brought against him. But in my opinion, after reading this with my lawyerly eyes, I feel like he's been completely cleared. Let's go ahead and read this statement. So it says, UKAD and Mr. Dillian Whyte issued joint statement. It's dated December 6, 2019, which is today. And you can head over to Twitter on Dillian Whyte's Twitter page where he actually shared this thing. So pretty fantastic stuff. It says the following statement. UK anti-doping, the professional boxer Dillian Whyte can today jointly confirm that Mr. Whyte was charged with an anti-doping rule violation, and the acronym they use for that is ADRV, earlier this year, but that this charge has now been withdrawn. Goes on to say that the charge was brought after a sample provided by Mr. Whyte on the 20th of June indicated the presence of 2 metabolites of a steroid. Bum, bum, bum. UKAD initiated an investigation with which Mr. Whyte cooperated fully. UKAD has accepted the explanation provided by Mr. Whyte in accordance with the UK anti-doping rules. The charge against Mr. Whyte has been withdrawn. Now, if you just read up to there, it may seem that they took Dillian Whyte's words as evidence, but obviously that's not the case. Now, when we continue to read, we see what actually went down. It says this would ordinarily mean that UKAD would not make any public statement in accordance with the applicable confidentiality rules to which UKAD is subject. However, since certain confidential information relating to this matter, including the fact that the initial charges has unfortunately made its way into the public domain, UKAD and Mr. Whyte have agreed to take the unusual step of releasing the following limited information to put an end to speculation concerning Mr. Whyte's status. So, I do want to say I think that what they're doing here as far as a doping agency is very admirable. They know that they've helped or basically caused a lot of damage by this leaking out into the public. And it was just a charge, not a conviction, not a final result. This was just a charge. I think it's very honorable what they're doing here. They go on to explain what happened. It says case details. In respect of Mr. Whyte's drug testing results, the following points are relevant. There is nothing in Mr. Whyte's longitudinal urinary profile to suggest that he has used steroids. The levels of the metabolites found in Mr. Whyte's 20th of June 2019 sample were extremely low. Mr. Whyte had provided a urine sample to VADA on the 17th of June, 3 days before the 20th of June sample, which was tested by a WADA-accredited laboratory and which returned a negative result, including for the metabolites in question. So they're saying that on the 17th of June, which is, a month and 3 days before his fight with Oscar Rivas, he turned in a sample to a WADA-accredited laboratory, and it returned a negative result, and and the test included those for the metabolites in question that were found on the 20th of June. Okay, so they're saying here that the test on the 17th of June, 3 days before the one taken on the 20th of June, was negative. He was clean. It goes on to say Mr. Whyte provided several other doping control samples to UKAD and VADA between the 20th of June and the 20th of July 19, the date of his fight with Oscar Rivas, all of which tested negative. So for all those people out there that were throwing Dillian Whyte under the bus before he had the opportunity to clear his name, shame on you. Shame on everybody that threw Dillian Whyte under the bus before finding out what actually went on. And to those that will continue to say that he tested dirty, they need to read this, okay? Because this is a very important document. What this is saying is not only was his test 3 days before the bad test clean, they're also saying that all the tests he took between the 20th of July and the 20th of June and 20th of July for that entire month after that bad test were also all clean. They continue, in light of the above points, the trace amounts of metabolites found in the 20th of June 2019 sample are consistent with an isolated contamination event, and they are not suggestive of doping. So this was an isolated contamination event. This is something that can happen at any laboratory. This is something that when they're preparing your food and they tell you this thing is made in a facility where nuts may fall into the food, or a facility where nuts are made, to let you know to be careful not to eat this thing because you may have an allergic reaction to nuts. This is the same kind of thing, right? There are drugs being tested at these laboratories all the time. There is absolutely the possibility that something gets contaminated during the testing, and that looks like is what happened in this situation with Dillian Whyte. The report goes on, or rather the statement goes on to say, having rigorously scrutinized and investigated the detailed factual and scientific evidence provided by Mr. Whyte, UKAD is satisfied that the presence of the very low amounts of metabolites in his 20th of June sample was not caused by any fault, negligence, or wrongdoing on Mr. Whyte's part, and, given the circumstances, could not have affected the fight between Mr. Whyte and Mr. Rivas on the 20th of July. So they're saying that even taking into consideration these amounts of metabolites that were found in the sample, they could not have affected his fight against Rivas. They go on to say, indeed, prior to that fight, an independent tribunal considered a number of the above factors before deciding to permit Mr. Whyte to participate. Following that preliminary ruling, UKAD continued its investigation, and Mr. Whyte provided further evidence in his defense, which was culminated in UKAD's decision to withdraw the charge. So the only sample that they found something in was that 20th of June sample. The one before that on the 17th was clean. All of the ones after the June 20th sample were clean. That indicates that that was a contamination. And even the amount of metabolite that they did find in the 20th of June sample looks to have been so insignificant that it wouldn't have affected his fight against Rivas. It couldn't have affected the fight between them. So what they're saying is basically that this was a contamination, an isolated incident, and Dillian Whyte didn't cheat, is what they're saying here. This contamination could have probably come from anything, and it looks more likely than not, based on what I'm reading here, that it didn't come from Dillian Whyte, that it came from perhaps some messed up, contaminated residue or something else that they had going on in that laboratory. The statement continues. It says, Mr. Whyte acknowledges that based on the test results reported to UKAD relating to his 20th of June 2019 sample, UKAD acted in accordance with the UK anti-doping rules by issuing the initial charge and in the conduct of its investigation. That's UKAD covering their ass. They're basically saying that they acted in accordance with the rules by issuing the charge. That's what they're supposed to do. When they catch something, they're supposed to issue a charge. They continue. They say, pursuant to the terms of the UK National Anti-Doping Policy, UKAD must always act in the interests of justice and not solely for the purpose of obtaining determinations adverse to athletes. In the present case, UKAD considers that means that the appropriate course of action is for the charge against Mr. Whyte to be withdrawn and does so in accordance with the relevant anti-doping rules. The British Boxing Board of Control, having delegated responsibility for anti-doping matters to UKAD, has been informed of the resolution of these proceedings against Mr. Whyte. You know, this is a fantastic ruling for Dillian Whyte. This, for all the smartasses that were saying, where's the B sample, where's the B sample? This is the ultimate redemption. This is the best result that Dillian Whyte could have essentially received. This is basically a letter saying that, look, you tested for over a month. You tested for a month and 3 days. The results from before June 20th and after June 20th all indicate that you're a clean athlete. And they included tests for the metabolites we found in the funky test. The funky test only happened once out of those 30 plus tries. So that must mean that the funky test was contaminated. And this is something that absolutely happens. I mean, this happens in almost every sort of test. There are false positives, contaminations can happen. And so this is, again, the best result that Dillian Whyte could have hoped for. So many people, again, called Dillian Whyte out for cheating, threw him under the bus, used this as further ammunition in order to avoid him, in order not to give him the chance that he deserves as the throwback fighter that he is in order to fight for a title. This guy has been WBC mandatory to Deontay Wilder for over a year, I believe it is. Almost 2 years probably at this point. Was interim WBC title holder and was provisionally suspended as the interim WBC title holder because of this bullshit charge that has now been lifted. So Dillian Whyte, and forgive me, I'm calling it a bullshit charge because of the horrible shit that kind of stemmed from this charge, him being provisionally suspended as an interim WBC title holder and everybody throwing him under the bus. That's why, ladies and gentlemen, and I say this as a human being, as an attorney, as somebody that, tries to be ethical. That's why you can never put stake in any sort of system like this until you get a final result. That's why when somebody's charged of a crime, or if somebody's arrested, or if somebody's, charged with violating some sort of doping policy, it's always very important to wait until the result and see what actually happened, because in this situation, it looks clear as day that Dillian Whyte did not do anything wrong. And now he goes into his fight with Marius Wach tomorrow in Saudi Arabia, a redeemed man. This guy is absolutely clean. If you ask me, based on the evidence I'm seeing here, I have absolutely no doubt at all. I have no doubt at all that Dillian Whyte was clean, is a clean athlete. And that means a lot in this day and age, because there have been so many guys that have pissed dirty, and especially guys like Jarrell Miller, who failed like 3 different tests and then went on the record to talk shit about Dillian Whyte. No, my friends. I've been saying it from the very beginning, and I'm not trying to be biased here. I really like Dillian Whyte. He's probably my favorite heavyweight, along with Deontay Wilder. And I'm not trying to be biased here, right? Because I like these guys. But, you know, the guy just comes off as the most genuine heavyweight we've got. He comes off as one of the most genuine and throwback fighters in the game right now. He calls himself the Can Man. He wants to fight anybody. He's down to fight anybody, anytime, anywhere. And based on that conduct, I've always thought to myself, did he actually cheat? Because he just doesn't come off as a guy that lacks the confidence and that lacks the pride in order to cheat. And so I believe that not only was he redeemed, but I feel like on a level that my own opinion of Dillian Whyte is redeemed, because I could tell just by the way this guy moves that he was not a cheater. And this is a guy that is calling out everybody in a funny, genuine way. A guy that we need to get behind, who just went through a whole lot, went through depression, was talking about backing out of boxing. This is a guy who needs to be celebrated for being a clean athlete that's down to fight anybody. And the WBC and everybody else should be a goddamn shame of themselves for not giving this guy the fight he deserves. So that's all I've got for you on that one, knuckleheads. Please let me know what you think. Like, comment, share, subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that bell notification icon. I appreciate you guys very much. And until next time, after the fight tomorrow, keep it clean. We'll see you after the